Well, good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to this evening's Fylde Council Cabinet. And the first item is declarations of interest. Does any Cabinet member have any declarations, any interest? Councillor Pounder.
I believe I've got one in respect of the 106 monies for Staining as a member of the Parish Council.
That's correct, thank you. And item 2 is the confirmation of minutes. The minutes that were for the meeting of the 8th of May. Proposed by Councillor Fazakerley.
I'm happy to second that.
Seconded by Councillor Little. We all in favour? Thank you. I'll duly sign those. Thank you. Item 3 are urgent items.
No urgent items this evening, Chairman.
Thank you. And item 4 is the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee recommendations. And Councillor Fabian Wilson. And first of all, Councillor Wilson, can I say our thoughts and prayers are with you at this time regarding your very sad loss.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
These recommendations come from our last scrutiny committee meeting. There were 2 items on the agenda. The allocation policy and tenancy strategy for social housing in the borough. And we were to note the consultation results and to recommend to the Cabinet that they adopt the draft housing allocation policy. We did listen and looked very carefully and asked questions and were quite satisfied. And to recommend that the Cabinet approve the Fylde Coast tenancy strategy as well. We next looked at the empty residential property position statement. And all of the possibilities were presented to us, and we scrutinized all of them quite carefully. And what we felt finally was that we would like to monitor the effects of the changes to the council tax discount scheme and report on and have a report on these to our November meeting so that we could see how it's working before actually taking a decision to go to something like the option 3, which did have resource implications. To review the action areas at the November meeting, and in particular to consider whether there will be a necessity to recommend the utilization of the action suggested in action area 3, which of course we hope will not be necessary. And then we asked to present an annual report following on from the review at the November meeting, which monitors the progress of the strategy so we can see exactly how it has been going since commencing. And those were the recommendations of the committee.
Any questions from Councillor Buckley?
I've got several, if that's all right.
Otherwise, I think David's here and he's very good at answering them.
Okay, first of all, it's on the consultation because it's noted in the minutes on page 7, about 2/3 of the way down, that the view was taken by members that the issue needed to be addressed to try and find ways to engage the public in future consultation exercises. Okay, what was the problem and how was
the idea was that to broaden find ways, cost-effective ways, to broaden consultation so that we are sure that we're having a really good amount of people participating, because numbers are very low. on consultations. And if you want to get a real feeling for what the public wants, but you are getting a very small sample. So trying to find ways that we can improve that sample to get more people involved.
Okay, so would you agree to adding that as a recommendation? It's within the body of the minutes, but there's nothing to say that, nothing, a recommendation to say that we need to address and improve our methods of consultation.
That's fine with us.
Okay. Just immediately underneath that, it talks about members being advised by email of the current number of applicants in each band. Can you tell me whether that took place? Were you advised?
No, I'm not sure. Okay. You'd have to have David.
Can ask David perhaps later on in the agenda. There's another
Yes.
item on. I'll pick that up. There was also on the next page, page 8, 3/4 of the way down.
This is on the empty residential property.
Yeah, empty
position.
residential property position. So page 8, 3/4 of the way down, it talks about members raising from their own knowledge of properties in the area. So say, well, I know about this and I know about that. And again, it says, Mr. Gillett advised he would ensure individual properties mentioned by members would be investigated and a response provided.
Yes,
Has
well,
that
that response will probably come at the meeting when we look at this again.
Okay. And that's fine. That's
Because the feeling is that sometimes ward councillors know about
do,
things in their ward
Absolutely.
that might be missed under other circumstances.
Absolutely. And the only other note of caution I would make to this, Leader, is any suggestion of extra resources in the future. I know that's not what you're asking for. I know
No, the
that is
idea
the
was,
I
our
know
hope
that. I
was
know
that the first option will be sufficient to take care of the issues involved, because option 3 does have cost implications.
Yes.
So we're hopeful, and that's what we want to see after we've had time to monitor what happens so far using the first option.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. I don't want there to be any suggestion
No.
that in Cabinet agreeing these recommendations that there is a tacit agreement also to further funding available under option 3. And I'm sure that's not what you're asking, but I just want to make that very
No,
clear.
it isn't. Our whole hope was that would never have to be used. It is there because it is available to be used, but the hope is that it wouldn't be necessary to ever have to use it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I will be particularly interested to see the results of the report to the November meeting, and quite obviously that will eventually come to Cabinet, so I'll be particularly interested to see the results of that. And so therefore, is anybody going to propose this item, please?
I'm very happy to propose this.
Thank you. Proposed by Councillor Little.
I'm happy to second it with that added recommendation in about the consultation.
Yes.
Thank you.
And seconded by Councillor Buckley, and also to include the additional recommendation with regards to the consultation. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wilson. And that takes us to item 5 and the Community Focused Scrutiny Committee recommendations. Councillor Mulholland, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Have you had the operation?
No, but it's imminent.
Imminent.
If all the comparing so, this is going to happen. Right. Good evening,
Good evening.
members. So it's the putting to you the minutes of the Community Focus Group Committee held on the 13th of June this year. 3 items on the agenda. Is that better? Yeah. Sorry. A couple of these items have been kicking around a while. The Fylde course bathing waters. If you remember at last Cabinet, I explained that there was reluctance to have what we consider to be a genuine scrutiny involving members from the three authorities, Blackpool, Fylde and Wyre, and that we were going to sort of put it to Blackpool that if they weren't willing for that, we would go it alone. Well, since then, as you can see in the report, we have been contacted by Blackpool, who feel that they're finishing the scrutiny review with this meeting in November, to which we're invited, and we're going to be represented there by a member. But they are saying that they feel it might be an idea to have members from Blackpool, Fylde and Wyre to look into the progress that's being made. Effectively, that's what we were wanting all the time. So, you know, that's a definite result for us. And hopefully you can see in the recommendation 2 that we're asking the Director of Development Services to progress this multi-agency approach and take it forward. Also, there was a question about member involvement in the, I always forget the full title of it, but the Fylde Peninsula group, which didn't have any member involvement, and there was a bit of an argument over that. It has been suggested by Blackpool to Andrew Dixon that in fact they would agree, or they would like to have member involvement, and subject to the statutory bodies on the Environment Agency and United Utilities, the intent to take that forward. So again, and of course that will not be strictly, that will not be a part of scrutiny. The other thing that I'm talking about, the 2 members from each authority, that will definitely be in the arena of scrutiny, and I would expect that the members on that will be from scrutiny. This issue is a completely different thing. This will be for you to fill. It will be member representation on that Fylde Peninsula group. I would have thought it was probably appropriate for any of 2 or 3 of the portfolio holders, because it covers such an area. But again, I think that's quite a good result. So then if I go on to the report for the Club Day Sport and Task and Finish group, obviously we can't go anywhere with this until we get notification from Lancashire County Council. Things haven't changed. When we do get notification that they've made some decisions on the road closures and the costings, we will reform and then we'll come back to you. So I hope you can accept that. And then the third item was the item for Lowther Gardens Trust and the governance arrangements. As you know, an internal audit was done by Saville Sykes, looking at the governance, and you can see the recommendations there. It was quite a long discussion about it. Basically, according to Saville, and just been confirmed by Claire Platt to me this evening, we are very much pushing it an open door. That the new trustee who was responsible for governance specifically is more than happy with all this. It appears, you know, early signs are that she's still working her way through the recommendations, but it would appear that, you know, there's not going to be a problem. They're going to be taken on board. We have recommended the 6 recommendations, the last one being that we asked them to consider accepting all our recommendations contained in the governance review report. We expect that to happen. The other recommendations, I'm sure you've gone through there. The only one I would just question, well, not question, I don't want to comment on, is to endorse the arrangements by which the council maintains the grounds and manages the associated leisure activities through the development of a further service level agreement between the council and Lowther Garden Trust. I suppose that's a natural progression, it's a natural way forward, but I'm just making you aware that that's not what we were looking at. We were looking at governance arrangements. So, you know, I don't have a problem with that being in there, but it's not a recommendation of ours. I suppose it's a natural progression of the way things are moving forward.
I'm particularly pleased that you got some result with regards to the Fylde Coast bathing waters. I thought we were going to be a voice in the wilderness there, but I think you've managed to pull people together with that, and that's extremely good. Any other comments from members?
Chairman, I think it's all going the right way in both the shoreline management. We've got now files bidding for the monies to accommodate what shoreline strategy is, and you know, I'm very happy for that. And our bid will come back later this year, and obviously it'll go back to scrutiny when you know, when the outcome is before us. And I think Alan will be dealing with that, won't you? Alan, aren't you attending that meeting.
I've been asked to go down to London to front a presentation. I'm sure I'll represent Fylde fantastically for us.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
It was on more wider scrutiny matters, so if Councillor Pounder wants to ask a question on this. But, yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered what the current situation was with the club days. Up until this year, Fylde en bloc used to apply for all the road closures, which brought the cost tremendously down. When we had to do it individually, it made it a lot more expensive. Now, I also believe that when there was official road closures, that the police had to escort front and back the actual processions, because they were the only ones with any legal powers to stop vehicles overtaking and coming through. Now, if they're taking all the policing off altogether, I'm a bit concerned of what is going to happen with that. A, about the cost of what the road closure is going to be, and secondly, about the safety aspect. I know on the side roads we can marshal them, it's not as bad, but on the main roads, you know, you've only got one. When you've got processions, you've only got to get one silly idiot in a car, and it could wreak havoc.
Actually, Kieran and his committee are somewhat tied until we find out what actually Lancashire Police's thoughts are and policy is going to be, and then we can certainly try to address that.
If I could just say, Chairman, it's actually not too much the police. I mean, their position's fairly clear. It's more the county. The road closure order that's been used, we're being told, is something like 200 years old. It's well out of date, inappropriate. Of course, you know, it's Pandora's box is open because of the police withdrawing the support. But we can't go anywhere, and really it's the same report more or less that I gave you last cabinet. We can't go anywhere until we get notification from county that they have made some decisions with regard to which are the correct road closure orders to use, whether or not and what will be, whether or not there are costs, and if so, what will be the cost, whether the cost will be waived for community events like club days. You know, we really just don't know. And until we do know, we can't take it any further. There are various issues that are all central to Lancashire, as a highways authority, Lancashire County Council. As soon as, you know, we do have our finger on the pulse, as soon as any decisions are made, you've already agreed at the last cabinet that we will reform the task and finish group and get on with it to see if we can do anything about it.
Yeah, I'd just like to ensure that we know what the legal position in respect of the police is and the road and the processions.
Chairman, the legal position is that the police have pulled away from supporting the procession. Fylde Council, hopefully, will still continue to submit road traffic closure orders on behalf of the club days, with which order we don't know, at what cost we don't know. So therefore goes to say that we actually don't know whether we'll be doing it or not doing it, because it depends on the cost. And knowing what Councillor Buckley's like, you'd think it was her own money she's spending, which I think is great, because that's as it should be. You know, I've always said, you know, in the past that I should be looking at this as if it's my wallet. We don't know. It's no good making guesses. We do not know. What we do know, unfortunately, and it's been clear for some time, Councillor Pounder, is that the police have withdrawn, and you know, any traffic management will have to be done either by a traffic management company or by qualified marshals who will have had to have done a course. But I think the parishes, by and large, are well aware of the situation. I don't want to give anybody the impression that we are trying to take over the management, because the club day committees do a fantastic job, and I think they'd be quite offended We, of course, help them out with the road road closures, and that is really where we're going. When we have more information, we'll come back.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Buckley.
Just on a wider note, I think this is great scrutiny work going on, and I recognise that your task and finish group on club day is yet to come back, and it will do. What other task and finish groups have you got outstanding, and when do you think they'll be reporting?
Well, the big one, it's a tabletop piece of work, as I said to you at the last cabinet, is the question of the mortality rate at Blackpool Hospital. Yeah. And we've got Annie Womack working on that, and she's got a very sharp analytical mind, just the right person on it. We've already composed a letter which has gone out to hopefully everybody that we can think of that has an involvement in the monitoring side, as well as the CQ, you know, whatever. And of course, as has happened to us before at file scrutiny, obviously when the mortality rates were published, we decided it was going to be a good thing to look at why nobody else had flagged it up other than Blackpool themselves. And it's become even more topical as we've gone on with the things that have happened in Morecambe Bay, etc. So it is quite a topical issue now. Again, let's be clear what we are looking at. You know, we aren't looking at, you know, the wider issues. We are simply looking at why it seems to be that Blackpool Hospital actually realised these figures themselves 18 months before the government report and got an outside body in to look at them. We were concerned and are concerned that none of the other monitoring bodies seem to have been the people that put this flag up, and that's what we're asking. So these letters have gone out, we're waiting for replies. I don't see this going on and on. I think once we get some of those replies, we'll be able to formulate the way forward, and we'll bring that to Cabinet.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm also, Councillor Little.
Just to say that as the Health and Wellbeing Board member, I have been giving Annie Womack and Kieran all the information I have and the list of contacts. So I am aware of this, and I am in the loop.
Okay. I'm also aware that this week, and this is only for information purposes, that this week NHS, the lead man for the NHS North has been introduced into Blackpool to begin his investigations, and that has started this week. So I'm aware that things are on the move.
Good.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mulholland.
Thank you, Leader. Although I'm not Councillor Mulholland, I hasten to point out. It gives me pleasure to endorse the recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you. So proposed by Councillor Fazakerley.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to second this.
And seconded by Councillor Trelfall. We all in favour? And thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you much indeed. That takes us to item 6. Which we'll
It's
find.
a Vimto, Councillor Mulholland.
As alcohol chair.
Item 6 is the Information and Communications Technology Training and Development Strategy Action Plan for elected members, and Councillor Nash. Good evening.
Information technology at its best. This is something you're going to be seeing a lot more of if we carry out the strategy that we're doing at the moment. On this tablet I've got, with a tiny bit of information, every bit of paper that came out this year for Fylde Borough Council. And I can refer back to it, make notes, and whatever. But the aim of what I'm doing is reminding you of the strategy that we talked about earlier in the year, I think it was March, and how far we've got with it now. Our strategic objectives, which are laid out here, are to ensure that all members overall make best use of emerging technology. So we've been carrying out a trial with all members of member development have a device of one sort or another. This is an Android. We have two what's called bring your own device, which is this one and an Apple, and 4 borough-owned devices which we've tested as far as the Bahamas at the moment. They seem to work well. In that one member was able to carry on working with us from afar under a palm tree, no doubt. We realised that the knowledge of members ranges from probably 2 tin cans and a piece of string to super geek, and we're attempting to cover all aspects of that in setting out a policy so that members can be trained in the use of this, make better use of it in communication, not only with other members and being able to use it for any meetings that we have around the council, but also to communicate better with the people in their wards. And with the onset of social networking in particular, which I think members of Parliament are streets ahead of us with at the moment, we intend to catch up. The strategy is dovetailed in with that for all employees of the council, so that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, but we're moving at the pace that we're able to with members. There are certain Luddites who set fire to it, and on the other hand, there are, if you look onto your left to the chief executive, no doubt he's got a device in front of him. And it's not so much the hardware that matters, but how we use it. And what we're looking at is how can we get all the separate levels of knowledge and ability together. What training we can help them with, not just face-to-face, but also online. And how we can actually move the whole council forward so that we are achieving the commitment that we have to North West employers to be in the highest category. At the back of the document, you'll see that we do have an action sheet, a rolling matrix of the things that we are doing that are open to everybody, and the dates that we are looking at achieving them by. It's a simple plan, because the best plans are simple, but also the hardest to achieve. We're looking at all members being able to be paperless in a member development group. And I looked at the amount of paper in my cupboard the other day from last year, and it was about 11 inches thick. And if you can put it all on this, we can actually achieve what we want to do with the right hardware and software by making savings elsewhere. And that's the aim of what we're doing. So I commend our strategy to the Cabinet.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions from Cabinet members?
No, just a comment, Leader.
Yeah, you're about the 48th member that said that to me so far.
Yeah, I appreciate it'll be a difficult time, and but we've got to move along with the technology, and there may be 1 or 2 dinosaurs amongst us that will
special needs, that's all.
that are unable. I struggle at sometimes, and quite simply ask my granddaughter to fix it for me, so that I need to be helped. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Karen. Councillor Buckley.
It's just a comment to wish you good luck with this exercise.
Yes.
I think it's great. I think it's very difficult, though, to even lots of us that do have mobile phones and iPads and all that, we still struggle to get away from the paper that you like to read and scribble on. Because when you're asking questions and you're going to make notes, it's so much easier just to scribble on the paper. So good luck with it. I do wish you well. And I'm really pleased that obviously it will hopefully reduce overheads. It'll save us costs. That's brilliant. But getting us completely transformed paperless is, you know, is quite a utopia position.
Yes.
Well, I can still remember when we had the first mobile phones that weighed 400 weight and the battery went in 6 minutes, and now everybody's got them classed to them. So it's going through that barrier, I think, that we need
Yes,
to do.
it's moving forward, and I agree it's the way to go. And but I also am a person that likes to look at hard copy and make notes and be able to highlight things and underline things. But it will certainly be a very valuable tool in the future of FBC.
I wonder if I might just compliment the staff that have helped us with this, in particular Andy Kane and Ross McAlvey is over here, and the enthusiasm that Tracy Morrison and our chief exec have put into it, which has helped it to move on. This is very much a joint effort.
Thank you very much indeed.
I mean, heard what all been said. I'd take great pleasure in proposing this item.
Thank you. Propose.
No, great pleasure. And we have a
propose-
gentleman at the back, Ross, who will, anybody needs any assistance when it comes to this, all you've got to do is pick up the phone and ask him, and he will assist you.
Thank you.
He'll assist you in doing the iPad.
So proposed by Councillor Pounder, and I'm delighted to be able to second that, and thank you for your report, Councillor Nash, and I also will pass on your kind regards and thanks to all the staff involved. Thank you very much indeed. Item 7 is the corporate plan, and the corporate plan proposed for 2013 to 16, and it is before you this evening. That plan has been added to with regards to some specific items. Cabinet tonight are asked to agree the proposed corporate plan. This will then go to scrutiny prior to the approval for full council. In the event that there are any significant amendments to be made as a result of the scrutiny process prior to full council, these will be included in an accompanying report. The recommendations are there on your order papers on page 28, and the full corporate plan is shown on page 31. This is for endorsement, as I say, by Cabinet tonight before going to scrutiny. And have any members any particular questions with regards to it? Councillor Little.
It's not a question, actually. I showed this to a chief exec of PCT, and she was very interested in the people and the health bit, and she thought we'd got it really right. And she's reporting back to the Lancashire Health and Wellbeing Board, and she thinks we've really got it, and we could really take this to other councils. So it's, I think it's a really good document. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Trelfall?
Chairman, of the corporate plan as a whole, is it, as a whole, the corporate plan, it's a big exercise, and what does it cost, and what do we gain from it?
Well, quite clearly, it sets out the future and the way that we are set to achieve in all the areas of place, people, prosperity and performance. It sets a long-term outlook, it sets a medium-term outlook and a short-term outlook. And we can then judge the performance of this council on those three criteria. It is a case of calling another way of of actually looking how Fylde Council is progressing through in the future, and is an essential piece of work. And whether Chief Exec wishes to add any comment to that.
The statutory piece of it.
He does.
It's statutory.
Well,
That's really what we're on.
it's if you don't do it, then you could be held to account through your auditing processes. KPMG always show a keen interest in your corporate plan. I'm not convinced it's been legally statutory since the days of the best value performance plan being removed. But I remember when I started here 12 years ago, and Trevor was the number one critic of the glossy brochure, and I shared his sentiments, but it had to be done. I think we spent £12,000 on producing 8,000 copies of a glossy brochure because we were required to do a certain amount. This is now a very efficient process. It is an important business tool that you would do even if you didn't have to do. It has been agreed as part of our performance management framework and is used to ensure that the things that we've committed to doing at the highest level and the outcomes we want to achieve in the long term, we don't lose sight of them in all the action plans and improvement plans and service plans that sit behind this overview that we try and make as efficient and simple as possible.
I'm glad that's been said, Chairman, because I didn't want the corporate plan to be just come an exercise and a piece of paper that people put on the back of them, and I think it is an important document, and as long as it has credence and it is taking us forward, I'm quite happy.
It's like number 7 says, all customers to receive excellent customer service as standard. And I think that might, that's achievable. I think it's really...
Members shouldn't be surprised. This comes to Cabinet every year for approval, and obviously going to scrutiny and to take in their recommendations. And this is the first process of it. It is something that we have to do, and I think we've managed it extremely well. And with that, I'm delighted to be able to propose this item to Council this evening for adoption.
I'm happy to second that, Leader.
Seconded by Councillor Fazackerley. Are we all in favour of that? Thank you very much indeed. Will take us to item 8, and is the medium-term financial strategy. And good evening, Mr O'Donoghue.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. Thank you. This is the financial outturn report that comes before you annually. This deals with the outturn for the year just gone, 2012-13. It's broken down into 3 broad sections, revenue, capital and treasury management. I'll briefly take you through the headline figures for the report. There's a lot of detail in the appendices, but I'll signpost those to you as I go through the report. Before I do that, it's just worth bearing in mind that during the year, management team issued direction to all budget holders and all spending managers across the council to maintain efficiencies and remain prudent wherever possible. And that's had a downward effect on costs. We continue on a modernisation agenda, and I think that's reflected in these figures that are presented before you tonight. So the first of the 3 sections is the revenue position for the council. That's summarised in table 1 on page 35. When council set the budget for the current financial year, it was budgeting for a surplus of resources of £0.956 million. The outturn position for revenue was a surplus of resources of £1.386 million, which is effectively a favourable variance of £430,000 in respect of revenue. The breakdown of how that is proposed to be dealt with is also shown in table 1, in that £73,000 is proposed to be transferred into general fund reserves out of that variance, and £357,000 is going to go to other reserves which are set out in table 2. Those being the top-up of a land charges reserve which was established last year. That's for a potential liability that the council's got for repayment of land charges, fees, income that it's already had. With the remaining 319,000 proposed to be transferred to the capital investment reserve, which was set up and approved by members when budget was set in March this year. That will leave a balance on the capital investment reserve uncommitted of 670,000. And I think the intention when that was approved by council was that that would go to fund future capital investment without the need to borrow. In respect of how that affects the general fund balances position, the table on the top of page 36, table 3, shows that general fund reserves at the end of the financial year will sit at £4.8 million. The first call on that £4.8 million will be slippage of 73,000, which is identified and detailed in Appendix C of the report. The favourable variance of 430,000 is analysed in some detail within Appendix B of the report. There's a line-by-line breakdown in there that I don't propose to go through tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions on. So that's the summary position in terms of revenue. In respect of capital, there is a favourable outturn position of 411,000 as set out in Table 4 on page 37. That three main elements of that relate to an underspend on the boxes to bins scheme, which was delivered during the year, in the sum of 289,000. That's been through the purchase of smaller bins and fewer bins than were initially anticipated. So the £289,000 added to £94,000 increased capital receipts than were budgeted for. That's largely in relation to additional capital receipts from right to buys, sale of ex-council houses from new filed housing. And there was already a surplus on the capital programme of 28,000. Those three added together give the 411,000 favourable position in terms of capital. Over the page on page 38, there is a breakdown of slippage which is asked to be approved this evening. That's a big number, £1.487 million of slippage. The lion's share of that relates to schemes that have been before members, both council and cabinet. The LAMS scheme, which has been approved, but we're still trying to line up a lender to kick that scheme off. The Ansdell regeneration scheme, where there've been, I think, some issues on ownership of forecourts, which has delayed that, but that's been to cabinet before, and disabled facilities grants. The reason for the DFG slippage is that the council was allocated additional funds very late in the financial year, which have topped up that budget, which has meant that couldn't all be spent in the financial year. There's a full details of scheme by scheme is in Appendix D within the body of the report. It's also worth noting Table 5 sets out the position in terms of capital receipts received during the year. There's a balance of unallocated capital receipts at £271,000. That relates to residual receipts from the disposal of the assets lined up for the accommodation project. And indeed, there's the special council set up for next Tuesday evening, which is going to allocate more funds to start the refurbishment of the town hall from that residual receipt. The capital financing for the programme is set out in Table 6. So the total spend for the year was 2.8 million, and how that is going to ultimately be funded is also set out in that table. The final section of the report deals with Treasury Management, and the Treasury Management Annual Report starts on page 40 of the papers. Essentially, during the year in terms of borrowing, The council didn't borrow any more money during the year. The council's borrowing remains at £3.8 million. The average interest rate payable on that borrowing is 2.75%. There are a suite of prudential indicators that